Hi everybody, Grid21 back with another video, and I am so sorry that it's been a while since I posted a video. I've been trying to come up with some really good ideas and then having enough ambition to actually record them, but today I have that ambition and I wanted to go ahead and just kind of take you through a walkthrough of a piece of music that I recently released that you can listen to over at SoundCloud. If you go to soundcloud.com/FromTheFourWinds, that is my artist name where I release all my music, and you guys can buy it on Bandcamp as well if you want to, because there's a link to buy it on SoundCloud as well. But I wanted to take a bit and walk you through the piece of music that I released, because I felt like I learned a lot of really cool stuff using FL Studio that was worth noting. I'm going to try my best to explain my process behind things. I don't know really how to explain like audio that well, other than just like explaining as I go, but I'm going to try to take you through my mind of mixing and stuff, and hopefully if somebody picks up off of what I'm talking about. So bear with me as I try to slowly go through this and just kind of talk about audio, because it's super fun. I don't know how long this video is going to be, so just sit back and relax. And before I get into it, please also check out my Twitch stream where I live stream some of my audio mixing at twitch.tv/grid21. I stream Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, starting at 4:30 p.m. EST. And you should also join our Discord where we talk about stuff like this all the time. So let's go ahead and jump into it. Like I said, I'm going to try to explain this the best way that I can. Trying to explain stuff in FL is not like trying to explain stuff about how a computer works or how stuff in OBS works, because it's just, I don't know, audio is just a really abstract thing, and unless you do it yourself or use a similar software, it's really kind of hard to like go through it. So and this is also my first, like, I'm talking about FL Studio. This is kind of like my first, like, I'm going to talk about FL Studio and how do I explain this type of thing. So I guess we're all going to learn together, right? Because that's part of what makes us, that's part of empowering each other, is learning together. So this is my track that's entitled Agents Deployed. It is a Valorant inspired track. I want to just say really quick though, before I jump into this, when this track was finished, I sent this track to one of the composers for Valorant, who did listen to it, and he liked my piece a lot and said he really liked what I did with some of the distortion effects and stuff. So I thought it was really cool to be able to talk to a real video game composer. So I thought it was just something worth noting. But we're going to talk about some of this and just kind of work through it. So this is all the instruments that I used. Some of these didn't end up getting used. It's kind of a funny story. This project originally started out as me making stream notifications for one of my friends for their Twitch stream. And I came across a couple synthesizers that I listened, I heard, and I immediately fell in love with. And I'm like, I have to do something with this. Part of the way that I write music is that I find a synthesizer that I like, and I think to myself, this is so good, I have to do something with it. It just can't sit there sounding cool and not have something to be done with it. And what really inspired this particular track was an instrument called Rave Sequencer, which I'll play as a loop on one of the notes. And so that particular sound was something that I really wanted to use as the bass for the rest of this piece. So I've been learning a lot lately about how to use the plugin called Fruity Send. And Fruity Send allows you to basically send audio from one particular mixer track to another mixer track. There's a lot of videos where I guess people could explain how Fruity Send works. I'm going to try my attempt at explaining it. We have Rave Sequencer, and we have the Destructor plugin with a Ozone Elements 9 and a Fruity limiter. And I'll explain what the limiter does a little bit after I explain some of what's going on between these two channels in general. So Rave Sequencer, it sends into Destructor, and this is part of, if you've ever done live sound, generally mixer boards have an effects send and effects return. Rave Sequencer is doing, Rave Sequencer is doing basically a similar concept where I had a Fruity send and I said send to Distorter, aka the Destructor plugin, and it goes out and then comes in, and then obviously goes out to main, and then gets mixed into a submix. So I do a lot of submixing, sub-routing before it hits the main audio out. I think it's just a really easy way to just do mixing and have a little bit more control over what happens before it hits the final master out. And it's something I've really just kind of enjoyed, that like, oh, this is kind of, useful to do a send and then a return, and then it goes out and everything. I realized that you could use things like Patcher to, because generally what you could do as another option, if you didn't want to do all that, is you could add the Patcher plugin and then throw in your favorite effects or whatever, and it sits on the master, like I'm going to call like the master or sub-master channel for that particular instrument or plugin. The problem that I have with this is that it doesn't really mix the same way, I feel like. I mean, yes, you can adjust the mix style for that effect, but there's something really interesting about the way that you do a Fruity send, that it sends to a completely different track by itself, where it's been, the channel rack's been edited a little differently. The mixes are all the way up, and you can just mix everything as a whole together. And so that's something that I decided to do with this particular piece, was to just do everything as a send, and then there's a return channel, which is this effects submix. So that's one of the things I've been doing NFL that I've really been finding super powerful, and there's a lot more control done, or there's a lot more control involved. There's, just more, everything just kind of sounds better, really, in my opinion. Now, moving a little bit along here, I mentioned that there was a Fruity limiter, and there's also a Fruity limiter on the Rave Sequencer, and it's not for what you think. FL can do, as we all know, FL can do a lot of sidechaining, and I have a low drum beat doing a sidechain into Fruity limiter, basically in the compressor side of the plugin, to create that like that bump, kind of like if I play actually part of it here, you can sort of hear it. It has that real like send effect, although I'm not sure if I'm actually, let me try something really quick. I'm not sure if I'm quite executing this the right way. I don't know, I may or may not have been doing my sidechain correctly. I'm not sure. I'll have to play with this later. But I have this basically sending to both of these tracks to create that like that pumping effect. Although now that I look at it, I wonder if I might have misconfigured this. I don't know. But I wanted this to kind of have like that really like intense feel from the drum beat, and just create that like that nice little like motion moving section. Actually, let me just quick try something real fast here. I wonder if I did miss something here. Hold on. Does this matter? No, I don't think it did. I may or may not have been doing this correctly. Interesting. I may have potentially misconfigured my sidechain. Hi, everybody. Future Grid here. So I went back and checked my project in FL Studio, and I realized that I really did do my sidechaining wrong with the drums and low synthesizer. But after playing with it, I realized it really wasn't that big of a deal, and ended up creating the sound that I wanted. It's just that if I looked like I was confused, because I genuinely was and didn't realize I had done my routing wrong. So don't do what I do. Just make sure you check your sidechaining if you ever do that, and do as I say, not as I do. Oops. Oh well. Too late. Track's already been released. Lol. But anyway, if I was attempting to sidechain, I did it wrong. So don't do what I did. Do as I show, not as I do. But it still ended up creating a really cool result anyway. You guys can listen to it on SoundCloud if you wanted and really get an idea what it sounds like. So that was something I was attempting to do, apparently did wrong. So anyway, just been experimenting a lot with like sending and sidechaining and stuff. And obviously I'm still learning how to sidechaining because really I did my sidechain. So that's okay. We're just going to move right along. So one of the other things that I've been learning how to do better, or trying to learn how to do better is EQing, basically EQing like reverbs and EQing like your reverb and your and I don't know, like delays and stuff like that, learning how to mix delays and reverbs to better and stuff. One of my really tough things that I have difficulty doing is EQing drums to create a really decent drum space. I personally like using the tall reverb, although sometimes tall reverb is not always the most appropriate reverb to, I don't know why, it's just the way this particular plugin works is really interesting. But talking about this drum effects thing here, I had my drums sidechain into drum effects, but it does a fruity send from the drum track submix to drum effects channel, and then obviously goes out to main and everything. And the reason why I decided to have this EQ curve like I do for my drums is that with every effect that you introduce, you're also going to introduce additional frequencies that you may not necessarily want. And this is true for synthesizers. I think this is true, I feel like, for drums especially and stuff, because, you know, as you introduce more and more things, it gets like amplified, more wild, more crazy. And so having that nice tight control over your effects, I think, help cut out frequencies that you didn't intend to have by introducing additional stuff. Because like reverbs it depends on the reverb plugin. Reverbs can get especially out of hand very quickly because obviously they're trying to digitally create a natural drum room space, or sometimes you want things to sound like they're in a giant hall. And you know, it's like if you were in a real, you know, in a real hall space in general, and you go to clap your hands or stomp your foot, you hear all the richness of it, but then you also hear some sub frequencies that don't really sound that great. And so for this one, I was really trying to make an effort of that. I'm going to make my drums sound good. And I sent my drums into this drum effects channel that has a tall reverb and has the high and low ends slightly rolled off. It's not like extreme. I've been trying to be more conscious of how extreme I'm making my dips in my EQ, because I realized that, like, while it's good to use an EQ to, as I had it described as originally, you can use an EQ to like carve out frequencies, and that can be fine to a point. But then you can also, and this is something I learned from, I think it was from Joe, what's his name? Joe Glider. He does home studio recording. He's got a whole YouTube channel that talks about home studio recording. You can end up sacrificing certain frequencies that you do want by having a carved out EQ. So I've been more conscious of, I'm going to turn this frequency down just enough where it's sort of there, but it's not annoying. And that's why I was trying to learn how to be a little bit more conservative with some of my roll-offs of my frequency here. This is my drum beat, for example. And you kind of hear what it sounds like if I were to turn off this EQ. It's kind of maybe hard to hear. You probably would have to listen to this on normal speaker or on stereo speakers, but you know, I wanted to have that like boom, tss, boom, tss, but I didn't want to hear like this boom, tss, boom, tss. I didn't want to hear that hissing. Sorry, I actually didn't end up showing what I was doing. Let me go back here. So I'll play this again really quick. So this is with it off, and this is with it on. And I think it really kind of helped shape the that, you know, that feel and that room space without adding additional sub frequencies that I may have not really wanted there. And also the fact that this track already has a lot of very low frequencies as it is. You know, I didn't really want to like add, and I didn't want to make it worse by having more sub frequencies coming out of my reverb and being like, oh, why does it sound so muddy? You know, clarity is really the most important thing that you want to have with your mix as much as possible. I suppose depends on what you're trying to do. This is just my opinion. Just you don't want you don't want stuff to sound like a mess. So that's something I've been experimenting with. I've been finding a lot more success with it. So there you go. Some other things that I've been learning in FL that I thought would be fun to share are how to use Patcher to create your own custom synths, kind of. And I'll kind of talk about this. It looks crazy, but there's order to the madness. There are 6 plugins inside of this particular patch. We have 2 Citrus, ARPman, Enlightenment, Dystopian, and Fast Pace. And Patcher allows you to create these custom layouts, and you can then tie them to what's called a surface, where you basically assign dial, slider, button, whatever. You then can right click and activate it, which allows you to create automation clips. And then you take that button that in this case a dial, it shows up as a red little thing here. You drag it to a particular plugin that adjusts a certain variable, and you get those variables to adjust by basically going to the parameters section, and allows you to add all these things to create your own custom patches and sounds and everything. And this one in particular I named Cinematic Synth. It's actually version 2 because it now has a surface thing attached to it, but or if I even played like, it's supposed to have that very cinematic feel to it, which I think I executed pretty nicely. The cool part is that I can basically take this and mix anything that I want. I can get rid of a sub frequency. I can do any kind of mixing that I want with things. I can change whatever I want with stuff. I can throw in this. Give you an idea what you can do with it here. So there's a lot of like things that you can change and each of these rows is affecting one or basically, yeah, each row is affecting one plugin at a time in the mapping section. There's a whole bunch of videos, I'm sure, that talk about more advanced things that you can do with Patcher. These are just some things I've learned in general. And the reason why I'm talking about all of this and showing all of this is that later in the track, if I pull up Cinematic Synth here, and if I go over to the surface section and later in the track, there's a part where the pitch gets adjusted through an automation clip. You see where there's some volume adjustment and stuff like that. And it created like this really interesting, wild sound with this, weird, like, I forget what it's called. I think it's called like it's not called a Razer effect. It's called it's a particular audio term. I don't remember what it's called, but that whole like, type of sound. I forget what it's called. I guess for lack of a better word, it's like a siren type of effect. And this was the first time using this particular custom patch in this track, and it really just created a very cool effect and everything. So that's one of the things that's another thing I've learned in FL that was pretty cool. I could maybe do a tutorial, I guess, about how to create your own custom surface if you guys wanted it. I'd have to find some good patches or good synthesizers, I guess, to create something pretty cool to explain it. My routing is a little weird in FL. I also noticed like FL kind of bugs out a little bit sometimes with sidechaining. Like it thinks I sidechained into something and I didn't actually sidechain into something, and it still does it anyway. And I'm not really sure what the deal is with that. So if somebody could explain in the comments why that happens. I don't know. It just something I just looked at. Cinematic Synth. This isn't supposed to actually sidechain into this, but it's acting like it's sidechaining into that, which is weird because it's not what the routing's supposed to be. And Yeah, that was just a large side note I just had to throw out there. I'm so sorry. So yes, so there's that. The final thing I want to talk about a little bit is this at the end. And apparently, like I said, I think I did my side chaining from my drums improperly, which makes me feel a little dumb because I realized that I didn't end up getting the effect I wanted to, but somehow it still worked out anyway. I have these 2 points in the song where the low drum beat and the distorter basically increase in volume. It gets super, super intense. This is, just doing some like really heavy automation of volumes. But what I ended up running into was, because I was increasing the volume of those 2 things, I ended up having to put a limiter in my master track just to help control that large part at the end where it gets like super, super intense. And you have, as you can see by the graph here, you see where it gets like super loud and everything. And I had to put the threshold and the knee and everything like almost at an extreme just to keep things from breaking through the sound barrier a little bit. But it ended up, by having that limiter too, it also ended up creating a really interesting like bark biting effect, which I thought was kind of cool, really. So I don't really mind that I had to like crush it that hard and stuff. I guess that's it. Really, like I said, I've never done an FL Studio like music explanation walkthrough thing. I may end up doing a video about doing sound design in FL because I have done some sound design in FL Studio and I don't see a lot of videos that explain how to do that. So that might be another interesting one for you guys to, if you want it, I'll do it. If not, whatever. So I guess that's it. Sorry if I felt like a bit scatterbrained. Like I said, this is the first time ever trying to explain how to do some of the stuff that I did in FL Studio here. I do hope that it was useful and you guys learned something. If you have any questions about anything in particular in the piece, let me know and I'll either try to answer via comment, or better yet, if you want to come to my Twitch stream at twitch.tv/Grid21, where I can talk about it and maybe even show you live. I might be able to pull up the project plan, what I'm doing. I do music production streams once in a while. I've been doing custom alerts for friends for their Twitch streams with the whole DMCA thing. So I'm learning how to be a better sound engineer and sound designer and composer and everything, and just self-teaching myself all these things. So I guess that's it. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you stuck around for the whole thing, you're amazing. I appreciate you. And otherwise, I will hopefully see you guys soon. So until then, take care and have a good rest of your week.